and tonight's presentation of Our Story is One by Luke Slott. A couple of housekeeping things. Who has cell phones here? Please get them out now for two reasons. One, please silence them. Two, you're welcome to take photos, but without flash. You're also welcome to do video recordings. But if you do, please share those on your social media, and please include the hashtag OurStoryIsOne. This program is a continuous program till the end, and if you could please hold your applause till the very end of the program, that would be most appreciated, and keep the records of the program and how it should flow. So Luke Slott is a singer and songwriter from Ireland. He was born into a family of artists in Dublin. He took to music at an early age, regularly watching both his father, a trumpet player, and his mother, an actress, performing in Ireland's concert halls and theaters. In his teenage years, he began writing songs and was quickly signed up by Sony Music, but later set out on his own as an independent artist. At the age of 21, Luke joined the Irish Baha'i community, and its message of the unity of humanity and the oneness of religion began to influence his music. As a solo artist, he has released several albums and has traveled extensively, giving concerts and workshops in over 20 countries, from Europe and North America to the Middle East and the Pacific Islands. In June 2023, the Baha'i International Community launched a year-long campaign called Our Story is One, in honor of the 40th anniversary of the execution of the 10 Baha'i women in Iran in 1983. The Our Story is One campaign seeks to create worldwide solidarity with all completed a 3-month, with all people in Iran who continue to struggle for freedom and equality today. Luke recently completed a 3-month tour of Europe and is now offering his moving musical program across the US and Canada. The Our Story is One tour is dedicated to the people of Iran. In April, he performed actually at the European Parliament, and he will be performing next Tuesday at the United Nations. So please welcome Luke Slott.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you all for being here tonight. It is so wonderful to be in Portland. This is the northwesternmost stop on my tour across the US and Canada, and I feel like I've just been, this whole tour, I've just been gradually making my way back to Portland. And it is so lovely to have reached my destination, and it is a very special destination for me because I actually spent 2 years living here in Lake Oswego. And those 2 years were, that was one of the most important periods of my life, both in terms of creativity and learning and the friendships that I formed, my sense of family that I now have here in the Portland area, and it really is such a joy to come back home to the Portland area and see you all again. So thank you all for having me, and before we begin, I just would like to express my thanks to the local assembly of the Baha'i community of Portland for having me here and for inviting me to make this personally very special stop on the Our Story is One tour. So, and I also just did want to acknowledge that I'm standing up here in front of you all, but the reality is there is a whole team of people who have put a lot of work in to arrange this event and open the doors and prepare to have us here tonight. So I just wanted to acknowledge my gratitude to everyone who has been involved in arranging this event and hosting me here and preparing for tonight. So tonight's concert is I want to really emphasize that this concert is actually just a very small part of a much bigger global year-long movement, which is called Our Story is One. And this movement, this campaign, was launched, as John mentioned, it was launched almost exactly a year ago, on June 18th, 2023, to mark the 40th anniversary of the execution of these 10 women who were all executed by the Iranian government for the crime of simply having faith. And this campaign has been launched in their honour, and the campaign really has two purposes. The first purpose of this campaign is to honour the memory of these 10 women, and to honour the values and the principles and the aspirations that they stood for, values like freedom of belief, freedom of conscience, equality, justice, to honour what these women gave their lives for. And actually, if you go online, if you search for Our Story Is One, on any social media platform, you'll find this incredible outpouring of artistic tributes to these women from all over the world. Paintings, songs, poems, films. There's just been this flourishing of artistic tribute to these women. So that is the first purpose of the campaign. The second purpose of this campaign is broader, and that is to express a sentiment of solidarity with and of support for all people in Iran today, particularly women in Iran today, who are continuing to struggle and strive and often be deprived of basic freedoms. And I'm just going to address a question that I assume many people often ask when they hear about this dedication tour. The question that arises for many people is, why is an Irish singer going around singing songs about the people of Iran? And firstly, as John mentioned, I myself became a Baha'i back in Ireland in my 20s. So through my Iranian Baha'i friends, I've just naturally become aware of the difficulties of life for many different people in Iran. But also, I've become aware that my fellow artists and my fellow musicians in Iran do not have the same freedoms that I have to sing songs and to write lyrics and to write and sing about things that are very important to me. And that I really feel for my fellow musicians in Iran today. You may have heard there have been several songwriters, musicians, rappers who have been arrested in Iran simply for writing songs. One musician in Iran was recently sentenced to death for lending his voice to the women's rights movement in Iran. And so I really feel compelled to use my voice to sing about those people and give my voice to them. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to go on a kind of a musical journey. And this will last about an hour and 15 minutes. And we're going to gradually make our way towards the story of these 10 women. And what I hope is that this journey, which will consist of songs and stories and some poems and memories, I hope that this experience will give us all a moment to reflect on the important things in life and to ask ourselves what is really important for the world, for the future, for our own lives. And so, with that in mind, I'd like to begin with a song on the theme of hope for a better future. So, you know, when we look around us at the world today, we see so many problems, so many wars, injustices, corruption. It's often easy to lose hope and say we'll never make it. And I think it takes a certain kind of courage to hold on to a vision of hope for a better future. And I think that these 10 women were a remarkable example of the courage to hope for a better world. Even if sometimes the world today looks like a wasteland. I made you a promise, and I don't want to break it, but you know I found it hard to believe that we had what it takes. And though I may be wrong in all my speculations, can still recall the pain when we stood with our souls stark naked. You made me a promise, and it's not like you to fake it, but you know I found it hard to conceive the time it would take. You may prove me wrong with all your new creations. Yeah, I can still recall your face when you told me one day we'll make it. And this wasteland will blossom like heaven, and all the colors we've painted here will merge into one. And there will be no religion as we know it today. No more endless division, just love, hope, and faith in the wasteland. In the wasteland, in the wasteland. I saw you down at the landfill with the photographs you sold, and you loved them like a child, though your face was getting old, and all we have is a dust heap. We'll make it beautiful yet, and when the breeze of spring comes back, this cold winter we'll forget. And this wasteland will blossom like heaven, and all the colors we've painted here will merge into one. And there will be no decision that we won't all make as one. No more senseless collision when these fickle wars are done. No, there will be no division, no sex, color, class, or creed. Just one world to belong to, and one color blood to bleed. In the wasteland, in the wasteland, in the wasteland. So, as we embark on this journey this evening, something that's very important to understand is that these 10 women were executed for their beliefs in the context of an extraordinarily rich heritage of freedom of belief and freedom of conscience. And so with that in mind, as a point of departure for our journey, I wanted to tell you a little bit about a kind of peculiar treasure, an ancient treasure that I once once saw on display in the British Museum in London. And if you ever go to the British Museum in London, you will see this ancient treasure, which is actually, it's one of the most significant artifacts preserved from the ancient world, and it's on display in London today. It's a large cylindrical stone tablet, it's about this big, known as the Cyrus Cylinder. And on this stone tablet, all around it, there is an inscription engraved into the stone. And this inscription has been described historically as the world's first charter of human rights. And it was created by an Iranian whose name was Cyrus, Cyrus the Great, or as Iranians know him in their own language, Kourosh. Kourosh, Cyrus the Great, was the founder of the ancient Persian Empire, the precursor to what we know today as Iran. And to this day, Cyrus the Great, Kourosh, is regarded by many people in many different parts of the world, of different cultures and different nations, as one of the most noble kings who ever lived, because of the fact that he created an empire that was explicitly built on the principle of freedom of belief and the protection of individual rights. So long before the Geneva Conventions and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights after the Second World War, an ancient Iranian king proclaimed across his empire the world's first charter of human rights. And this charter protected the rights of all people under the rule of Cyrus the Great to practice their religion in safety, to express their beliefs, and to preserve their own cultures and their own languages. And the heritage of Cyrus the Great has been described as a heritage of human understanding, of tolerance, of courage, of compassion, and above all, of human liberty. So a very beautiful, admirable heritage, not only for the people of Iran, but for the world. And in fact, I wanted to show you something. I have here a miniature replica of the Cyrus Cylinder. And I thought that as we go through our journey, I thought I would let this just find its way around the room, and if you'd like to see it, you can pass it on and take a look at it. It's just a souvenir, so you don't need to worry about it. So by the 1970s, over 2,500 years had passed since Cyrus the Great had founded his empire, and the people of Iran, or Persia as it was known, had gone through this history of highs and lows, of ups and downs that would make the world's most extreme roller coaster feel like a walk in the park. Great dynasties had risen up and had crashed to the ground. Religions had been born, peoples had conquered other peoples, and the people of Iran had somehow created this extraordinarily rich, blossoming, flourishing legacy of art and architecture and literature and science and medicine and philosophy. And that legacy, that heritage that had blossomed out of Iran throughout the ages, actually continues to exert a very profound influence on the wider world today. In fact, I read an article, just a couple of years ago, I read an article about the #1 best-selling author in the United States. The #1 best-selling author in the United States is, in fact, the English translations of an Iranian poet. His name is Rumi. Well, also by the 1970s, the people of Iran had watched as many of their leaders throughout the ages had, to one degree or another, drifted from the example of Cyrus, sometimes into periods of corruption, and sometimes even moments of tyranny. And so in 1978 and 1979, certain groups of people in Iran rose up in a revolution to overthrow the Shah, the king of Iran. But the result of this revolution was not what most Iranian people wanted. Because when the Shah finally accepted defeat, there appeared in Iran a power vacuum like never before. And this power vacuum was swiftly and ruthlessly filled by extremist fanatics who claimed that they possessed divine authority to rule over the people. And among these new leaders, it seemed as if the very memory of their ancestor Cyrus had simply vanished from their minds. From their pulpits, they proclaimed that the mere notion of human rights was a Western concept, incompatible with their society. And so from 1979 onwards, the people of Iran suddenly found themselves deprived of so much of the freedom and the progress that they had made. And they found themselves under extreme restriction. Artists, musicians like myself, poets, journalists, teachers, scholars, intellectuals, even students were arrested en masse and thrown in prison. Women, as a group comprising half the population, suddenly found themselves under extreme restriction and systematic oppression, just because they were women. And there is a very poignant short poem by the Iranian poet Halu, which describes this strange reversal of fortunes that happened to the Iranian people in 1979. And I'd like to ask Ebony to share with us this short poem of Halu.
February 1979. Amidst the chaos of the revolution, a prisoner wrote on the wall of Evin prison, "People, be aware. Very soon the Ayatollahs will topple the monarchy and prisons will turn into universities." Many years passed and I kept asking myself, what about all those nice promises? When is it going to come true? Then I landed in prison and I saw with my own eyes students and scholars everywhere. That's how the prisons turned into universities.
Thank you. So I'd like to dedicate this next song to all those heroes in Iran today who have not forgotten their ancestor Cyrus and who continue, often at great danger to their own lives, to stand up and defend human rights and freedom of belief in their homeland. This song is dedicated to the great Iranian lawyer Nasrin Sotoudeh and to the great Nobel Peace Prize winning defender of human rights Shirin Ebadi, and also to Narges Mohammadi, who you may have heard just last year was also awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her work defending human rights, and particularly women's rights in Iran, and who remains in prison today. This song is for all those unknown heroes behind bars in Iran today. This is called In the Shade of Paradise. There is a prison cell in old Tehran, and within a woman there child grows strong. There is a prison of poems unknown in old Shiraz, and from its invisible floors of stone a warning rose. When the towers in the sky fall and the river changes course and the powers up on high give in to the call, you will hear the people cry. Where did all the lovers run to? When did all the heroes die? Well, didn't you look behind these walls? They live on a plane of sacrifice. There is a rose garden in Esfahan, and if the nightingales sing their midnight song, when the towers in the sky fall and the ocean pulls its tide and the powers up on high give in to the call, you will hear the people sigh. Where did all the lovers run to? When did all the heroes die? Well, didn't you look behind these bars? They live on a plane of sacrifice. What did all the mothers come to? Where do all the sisters hide? Well, didn't you look behind these veils? They live in a sea of tearful eyes. Where did all the lovers run to? When did all the heroes die? Well, didn't you look behind these walls? They live in the shade of paradise. 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 There is a prison cell in old And so in 1979, the people of Iran entered a new chapter of their history. And today, some 45 years later, this chapter is widely regarded by many Iranians as one of the darkest chapters in the history of their homeland. Apart from targeting artists, musicians, journalists, scholars, educators, women, the new government immediately began clamping down on Iran's religious minorities. Iranian Christians and Jews, Zoroastrians, Muslims who disagreed with the new government were all targeted and harassed, and often were made the objects of brutal atrocities at the hands of their own government. But among all these groups that were targeted, there was one group towards which the new government became particularly vicious. And this was, in fact, Iran's largest religious minority, the Baha'i community. And I'm not going to explain in detail what the Baha'i community is or what the Baha'i faith is. That's not the reason we're here tonight. But there's a short saying of Baha'u'llah, who was the founder of the Baha'i faith and who was himself an Iranian, which says that it is better to be killed than to kill. It is better to be killed than to kill. And I think this short saying speaks volumes about the way in which the Baha'i community in Iran has responded to the very intense cruelty that it has received from its own government. From 1979 onwards, as the new government gained more and more power, Baha'is all over Iran were arrested simply for the personal beliefs that they held in their hearts. Their family homes were confiscated, or sometimes simply set on fire. Their sacred places and cemeteries were demolished and desecrated by government officers. Even new laws were enacted to officially dismiss Baha'is from their jobs and to expel their children from schools and universities all over the country. And yet, despite this cruelty that the Baha'is in Iran have received, their response to this government-sponsored persecution has been noted internationally for its very unique character. And their response has actually been, it's been so unusual that it has been studied by sociologists, by academics, by government institutions all over the world, and it has been given a special name called constructive resilience. And I love this phrase, constructive resilience. It gives me such a feeling of empowerment and strength, and a kind of a focus on building something, even in the face of extreme hardship and cruelty, constructive resilience. And one of the most interesting examples of this constructive resilience is the way in which the Baha'is in Iran have responded to the denial of their right to education. And this was actually the subject of a documentary film that was made several years ago by an Iranian journalist called Maziar Bahari. Maziar Bahari is not a Baha'i. He's a journalist who was in prison in Iran for his journalism. And when he came out of prison, he wanted to tell this story, this interesting story about the Iranian Baha'i community and the right to education. And he made this documentary, I'm sure some of you know it, it was called Education is Not a Crime. And it's a very interesting story. It goes something like this. So after the 1979 revolution, as more and more Baha'is around Iran were arrested and were fired from their jobs, and as more and more of their children were expelled from schools, the young people in that community were growing up without any prospect of a future. There was a stranglehold on the intellectual development of this community. So these young people had no hope of ever fulfilling their dreams. Dreams of becoming a doctor or a nurse or a teacher or an engineer or an artist or anything, a musician. And so in response to this situation, certain professors and teachers, many of whom had lost their own jobs, began to offer secret university-level classes in the family homes of these young people. And these teachers would smuggle school textbooks into people's homes, and they would sit around the kitchen table with these young people, and they would deliver to them university-level courses in the sciences and arts and economics and law and accountancy and medicine, anything you can imagine that would happen in a university was happening at these kitchen tables. And these young people fully understood that at the end of all of these studies, they would sit no official exam, they would gain no qualification, and they would get no job. They understood this, and yet they kept coming back to these classes simply for the love of learning, the love of knowledge and understanding, and of the enrichment of the human mind and the human spirit. And these classes started popping up in family homes all over Iran. And this secret network of teachers and students became, for all intents and purposes, a kind of an underground university, fully functional, spread throughout the entire country, and yet completely invisible to the authorities. And it became known as the BIHE, the Baha'i Institute of Higher Education. Well, after some years of this, the authorities finally found out about the BIHE, and they launched a systematic campaign to destroy it. Homes were raided, teachers were arrested, school books were confiscated, and every effort was made to shut down the BIHE. But by the time the Iranian authorities found out about the BIHE, it was too late, because so had the rest of the world. And the BIHE was already being recognized in the international academic world for its outstanding levels of education. And as of today, there are over 110 universities around the world, here in North America, back home in Europe, in Australia, which have granted scholarships to students from the BIHE and have brought them from Iran to their campuses to further their studies and develop their careers. And I've had the great privilege on my own travels of meeting in different parts of the world students of the BIHE who began their studies in secrecy in Iran and who are now living beautiful, flourishing lives and are using their talents to contribute to the countries in which they live. So I would like to dedicate this next song to the teachers and the students of the BIHE for persevering in the pursuit of knowledge. The song is also intended to be a kind of a reminder that for all the destruction and noise that we witness in the world, there are also wonderful, constructive things taking place. Sometimes more quietly, but they're building and building and building. They may be hidden from us, invisible, but they're there, as if hidden behind a veil. Come down and walk these roads around the city 7 candles burn. Follow me, all you who claim to be possessed of charity, down to the crimson sea. 100,000 veils have covered the sun, and darkest clouds have blocked and blackened the blue sky. Did you hear the fate of those who educate, who even in the grave find no respite from hate? Have you seen the youth who gave their lives for truth? That girl who kissed the noose and welcomed all abuse. 100,000 suns have fallen to earth, with blasts that block the ears from hearing the new song. 100,000 veils have covered the truth. How many mothers' cries are lost in the tumult? There is no war to fight. You have no sacred right, no holy book to cite, to make these wrongs seem right. Does it so offend to want this world to mend, to walk in hope to the end, and see each man a friend? Come down and walk these roads around the cities of Iran, which boast so much to man. So I'm sure that many of you are no doubt aware of the Woman Life Freedom movement, which erupted into the global spotlight a little less than 2 years ago, after the death of a young woman in Iran, a 22-year-old woman named Jina Mahsa Amini, who died while in custody after she had been arrested and really violently assaulted by the authorities for wearing her headscarf incorrectly. And Jina Mahsa Amini's death sparked this nationwide outrage and a movement which is led by women and is supported by men and children, and which actually spread around the world and became a global movement called Woman, Life, Freedom, with the aim of highlighting this issue of the oppression of women in Iran and in other parts of the world too. And this movement, as many of you I'm sure know, inspired daily protests on the streets all over Iran. Artists, musicians got involved to lend their voice to the voice of women in Iran. And you know what's so interesting about this Woman, Life, Freedom movement is that it actually has a remarkable history behind it. And this cause for women's freedom and women's respect and dignity and autonomy actually stretches back further into Iranian history than many people today realize, and even further back than the earliest women's suffragette movements in America and in Europe. And these women in Iran who today are fighting for basic human rights, basic freedoms, such as the freedom to choose how to dress personally. These women have in their own Iranian heritage a remarkable predecessor, an extraordinary Iranian woman who lived in the 19th century and whose name was Tahirih, which means the pure one, Tahirih. And Tahirih was a phenomenon of 19th century Iranian society. She was a gifted poet, writer, an extremely powerful public speaker. She was known to carry herself with a confidence and dignity that would strike fear into the religious leaders around her. All men, of course. She was also one of the leading figures in the very early history of the Baha'i faith in Iran. And today, Tahirih is considered by many people around the world, in many different countries, by those who know about her, she is considered by both women and men as one of the greatest women in world history. And she is looked to as an example of commitment to the cause for women's freedom and women's dignity and autonomy. And so I've written a song in tribute to this woman, Tahirih. In fact, I wrote this song here in Portland when I lived here. So it's a lovely thing to come and play it here. But before we get to this song, I actually wanted to share with you a story about Tahirih, and hopefully by the time we get to the song, we'll all feel like we know her a little bit better. So for this part of our musical journey, I wanted to invite you to use your imagination, because we're going to travel back in time a little bit. So I want to invite you to use your imagination, close your eyes if you wish, and in our mind's eye, we're going to travel back in time. We're going to travel about 175 years back in time to the year 1848. Now, 1848 was a peculiar year in the history books because it was a year that witnessed this sudden, sweeping cascade of revolutionary movements across the world, across large parts of Europe and Latin America. This sequence of social movements, of people rising up, calling out for change, calling out for justice and fairness in their societies. And because of this ripple of social movements throughout that year, it became known as the springtime of the people, 1848. Well, in the summer of that springtime, in a little corner of the Iranian countryside, as all these great movements were rippling across the world, an equally historic, yet smaller, quieter event took place. And an incident occurred at it was a gathering of less than 100 people who had come together to consult on the new teachings of the Baha'i faith. And at this gathering, in the Iranian countryside, an incident occurred that shook Iranian society to its core. And I often think that today, Iran has still not recovered from what happened at that gathering. So just to give you a sense of that, and at the center of this incident was this woman, Tahirih. So just to give you a sense of how serious this incident was, it's important to understand that Tahirih, as was the custom of her time, and just like all other women around her, had lived her day-to-day life with a veil covering her face in public at all times. And this was a custom of her time and her place that was so ingrained in 19th century Iranian society that the mere prospect of ever seeing a woman's naked face in public was just it was just unthinkable. It probably didn't even occur to most people. It just wasn't done. Well, at this gathering in the summer of 1848, in an Iranian garden, Tahirih, like a bolt of lightning, striking at the very root of Iranian society, appeared before the people, unveiled. And this act of defiance to the social norms and the expectations of women of her time was so incomprehensibly scandalous, so horrifying to the people at that gathering, that she sent a wave of panic throughout that gathering, a wave which has continued to ripple and ripple and ripple throughout Iranian society today. And there was, in fact, an eyewitness account of this incident. And I'd like to ask Naghmeh to share with us this account written by a man who was present at that gathering.
Suddenly, the figure of Tahirih, adorned and unveiled, appeared before the eyes of the assembled companions. Consternation immediately seized the entire gathering. All stood aghast before this sudden and most unexpected apparition. To behold her face unveiled was to them inconceivable. Even to gaze at her shadow was a thing which they deemed improper. Quietly, silently, and with the utmost dignity, Tahirih stepped forward. Her unruffled serenity sharply contrasted with the frightened countenances of those who were gazing upon her face. Fear, anger, and bewilderment stirred the depths of their soul. This day is a day of festivity and universal rejoicing, she announced. The day on which the feathers of the past are burst asunder. I am the blast of the trumpet. I am the call of the bugle.
Thank you, Naghmeh. So, this woman, Tahirih, was just like she was like a comet that blazed across the skies of 19th century Iranian society, and in many ways set an example and set a standard of courage and commitment, which is an example to the women of Iran today, who continue her legacy, striving and struggling and fighting for basic freedoms and for women's dignity and respect. In fact, in response to one of the many death threats that Tahirih received in her life, she once famously proclaimed, "You can kill me as soon as you like, but you cannot stop the emancipation of women." Well, this comet of Tahirih eventually blazed so brightly that the authorities of her time caught up with her. And in 1852, Tahirih was captured and arrested by a group of military officers who strangled her to death and threw her body down a well and covered it with stones and rubble, hoping that she would be forgotten forever. But she was not forgotten. And I'd like to now sing a song in tribute to Tahirih. And as I sing the opening, as I play the opening chords of this song, I'd like to ask Ebony to share with us some words of tribute to Tahirih, written by a man of her time.
May future generations be enabled to present a worthy account of a life which her contemporaries have failed adequately to recognize. May future historians perceive the full measure of her influence and record the unique services this great woman has rendered to her land and its people. May the followers of the faith which she served so well strive to follow her example, recount her deeds, collect her writings, unfold the secret of her talents, and establish her for all time in the memory and affections of the peoples and kindreds of the earth.
Close all your books and enter this school. I'll show you the secret of a new golden rule. Lay down your letters and run to the field. Your sword in this battle is the tongue that you wield. Oh, Tahirih, Tahirih, you were the eye that saw far away, far away. You took my breath and my heart away on the day when the heavens did roar and the earth cried out for more. You were the moon in the cold winter sky, the rays of your mind, the solace of my eye. And you were the blast to raise up the dead, the sound of your voice ever ringing in my head. Oh, Tahirih, Tahirih, you were the eye that saw far away, far away. You tore the veil from my heart away on the day when the oceans did boil and the sun kissed the soil. Chase every demon, expose every lie. Welcome the day of a great sober sigh. Put on your dress for the wedding once more, and cast me a smile as you pass through the door. Oh, Tahirih, Tahirih, you are the wing for this broken lost bird, the one lonely letter that makes well the word. So Godspeed the day when your trumpet blast will be heard, and lo, the dead will rise. The ones who sow this veil of lies will fall away before your So I'd like to now draw our attention to these 10 remarkable women who are being remembered this year on the 40th anniversary of their execution in Iran in 1983. And I'd like to just take a moment to introduce each of them by name. This is Ezzat, the eldest of the 10, pictured here with her family. Nusrat, here with her son. Tahari, named after the great Tahari of the 19th century, pictured here, in fact, on her wedding day with her husband, Jamshid. Zari, extremely gifted writer, poet. Mahshid, a student of physics. Akhtar, she was a nurse. Shaheen, who was known as Shirin, meaning sweetness. Shirin was a student of sociology who wrote such a profound paper on the treatment of drug addiction that it was used by teachers in their classes and was eventually published in the UK by the University of Sheffield. Simi, Roya, and finally Mona. And these 10 women were people like us. They were living their lives, looking forward to their futures, dreaming their dreams. We all have our dreams. Most of them were just in their 20s when they were executed. Several of them had been college students. I mentioned Akhtar was a nurse. Several of them were actually nurses who worked very devotedly in hospitals in Iran, caring for sick and injured people. One of them was a mother in her 40s, that's Nusrat, on the bottom in the middle there. Another was a mother in her 50s, that's Izzat, on the bottom left. And another was Izzat's own 23-year-old daughter. That's Roya, on the top left, mother and daughter together. And throughout 1982 and 1983, each of these 10 women were arrested and were charged by the authorities with a long list of crimes. One of their crimes was the crime of teaching children's classes, like something like Sunday school, where children in a neighborhood come together to learn stories and say prayers together and sing songs and play games and learn about things like what it means to be fair and to treat people kindly and to share and to things like good character and virtues. These children's classes are just one of the normal weekly activities that Baha'i communities all over the world offer as a service to their local neighborhoods or cities and towns, just in order to give local children of any different background a kind of a nurturing, safe environment for them to grow and be together and learn. We have these children's classes back home in Ireland. I'm sure you have them here. I mean, they probably happen right here at the Baha'i Center. I don't know, but they're everywhere. They're all over the world. But in Iran, teaching these classes for children was a punishable crime. The younger women in this group were charged with the crime of simply being unmarried. This too was a punishable crime. All 10 of them were accused of being spies sent by foreign powers to infiltrate Iran and to destroy their own country. And the list gets more and more preposterous as you read through it. But at the top of this list was the greatest crime of which they were guilty. And that was the crime of simply believing in the Baha'i faith, privately in their hearts. And for this crime, without any access to legal representation, without any proper trial procedure, these 10 women were imprisoned for months on end, sometimes being subjected to periods of solitary confinement and even physical torture. At times, these women were chained face down on wooden tables and were whipped on their backs and on the soles of their feet, sometimes 100 lashings at a time with a wire cable. And throughout all these months of abuse, these women were repeatedly asked to renounce their personal beliefs. Again and again they were asked, and again and again, all 10 women refused and refused and refused. And finally, on June 18th, 1983, the orders came down from the authorities to bring their imprisonment to an end. And I'd like to ask Naghmeh to share with us some eyewitness accounts of that day, almost exactly 41 years ago.
It was late afternoon on June 18th when the prison visit was over. Shortly afterwards, the guard called the 10 women and ordered them to board the bus. There were Mona, Roya and her mother Izzat, Shireen, Zareen, Mahshid, Simin, Akhdar, Tahireh, and Nusrat. The bus driver who transferred them from Adilabad to the execution site was greatly affected by the bravery and strength of the women and recalled at that moment as follows. I thought they were going to be released until we came up to the gate for the security check. That was where we found out that the ladies were going to be executed. All the way they were chanting. They were all cheerful and proud. Another witness, was one of the executioners who put the rope around their necks. He told the mother of one of the girls, "We gave them the opportunity to recant up to the last minute. First, we hanged the older women, and then it was the turn of the young girls, one by one in front of the rest. The youngest was last. We thought they would be so frightened that they would recant. We said to them, 'Just say once that you're not a Baha'i and we will let you go.' But none of them did."
So for the next song, I'd like to sing a short poetic verse which comes from the writings of Baha'u'llah. And I've just set this verse to a melody. And this is actually a relatively well-known verse from Baha'u'llah's writings. And you know, I have no doubt that these 10 women would have known this verse, probably by heart. And I can imagine that these words would have been a great source of inner strength and fortitude and patience for them as they went through this ordeal. This song is called the Sign of Love. And I imagine that it would have also been very meaningful to their family members. And so, as I play the opening chords of this song, I'd like to ask Ebony to share with us some memories of some of the members of these women's families when they heard the news of June 18th.
Thank you. From Zareen's mother. They let me go into the morgue. I never thought I would be able to carry on living after that moment. What I saw in that room and what I went through that day are indescribable. When I went in, oh my God, I saw 10 angels sleeping motionless next to each other. I knew all of them. I had been in the same prison with them. There were mother and daughter, Izzat and Roya, lying there. What strength kept me breathing and on my feet, I don't know. I visited all 10 angels. I found Zareen, embraced her cold body, and put my cheek against her delicate and cold face. I kissed the mark of the rope on her beloved neck on behalf of all her family. Her face looked natural and tranquil. From Mona's sister, the pain I felt that day was the same as when I heard the news of my father's martyrdom. I thought I would go mad. The prospect was so painful that psychologically I refused to accept it. Instead, I imagined the day when she would return home, her footsteps, her laughter, her lovely voice. I imagined embracing and kissing my beautiful sister. I wanted to share the pain of our father's martyrdom with her, and I needed to talk to her about the painful days when they were all in prison. I wanted her to share with me the sufferings she had gone through. I had plans for us to be together and support our mother. So many thoughts rushed through my head in the moment when I heard the tragic news of the martyrdoms. I hoped that someone would come in and say it wasn't true. I was still kneeling beside Mona. It was a bitter experience seeing my sister for the last time without a glass partition to separate us. I kissed her cold cheek and said goodbye to her. With all my heart, I wished she would open her eyes and let me see her smile one last time. But I knew she was observing us from above with an eternal smile, and one teardrop would break her heart. Thus, my beautiful Mona, I smile for the love you had for Baha'u'llah and humankind. May the world discover why you sacrificed your life.
Oh, son of man, for everything there is a sign. The sign of love is fortitude. The sign of love is patience. Under my decree, under my trial, oh, son of man, for everything there is a sign. The sign of love is fortitude. The sign of love is patience. Under my decree, and under my trial, under my decree, and under my trial. So some of you may have noticed in one of the earlier songs, I sang a particular line that referred to a girl, and the line went, that girl who kissed the noose and welcomed all abuse. Well, that girl was Mona Mahmoud Nejad. Mona was the youngest of the 10 women at the time of their execution. She was just 17 years old when she was hanged for these crimes of her personal faith, of being an unmarried girl, and for teaching children's classes. And you can see here, you can kind of get an impression from these pictures here that Mona was a vibrant, joyful, life-loving girl who played guitar and obviously loved dancing and joking around and being happy. She obviously loved her family here with her dad. And Mona was dedicating her spare time outside of school to these children's classes. They were very important to her, and she was very devoted to them. And she dedicated a lot of her spare time to being with children, nurturing them, teaching them through stories and games and arts and crafts and songs about things like justice and truthfulness and compassion and wisdom. She was teaching all these things to little children because she recognized, even at 17 years of age, she recognized that the future of humanity lies in our nurturing of children and of the future generations. And she was very dedicated to this. Even when she knew that this was a dangerous thing to do in her society, she continued nurturing these children and spending time with them. And you know, over this past year of this Our Story is One campaign, just as I've been going through my own learning process of reading about these women and learning about their lives, I have just been so kind of knocked off my feet by the courage of these women and the deep inner spiritual strength, the constructive resilience of these women. But the courage of Mona is something really, truly extraordinary, because on the night of their execution, on June 18th, 1983, when the 10 women were brought from their prison cell to the public square of their city, Shiraz, to be hanged, all in a single night, one after the other, 17-year-old Mona insisted on going last because she knew how painful it would be for her 9 friends, some of them mothers in their own right. She knew how painful it would be for them to have to stand and watch a 17-year-old girl be killed. And she wanted to spare them the trauma of having to witness that. And she wanted to stand and support her friends in their final moments. But the maturity of this decision, the profound maturity of Mona in making this decision, it's almost hard to comprehend. It's almost something otherworldly, because this decision meant that not only did Mona herself have to stand and watch as her 9 friends were hanged in front of her, but it also meant that when her turn came, she had no one left to stand and support her. And that she had no one to look into her eyes just one last time with love, no one to just whisper a word of friendship and support her. She had to go to the execution completely alone. And when the executioner put the rope around her neck, Mona stood up tall and she raised her head high and she kissed the noose. And I'd like to ask Nagli now to share with us a memory of Mona's mother about one of the last conversations they ever had.
She looked into my eyes and said, "Mama, I know I will be killed. I just want to tell you what I'm planning to do. If you don't let me tell you now, you will lose the chance forever, and then you will be sorry that you didn't let me talk. Now, do you want me to tell you or not?" Haltingly, I agreed. "Okay, tell me." When I held my elbow and started to walk. "You know, Mama, the place where they're going to hang us is probably going to be higher than the ground, so they can put the rope around our necks. I will first get permission to kiss the hands of whoever put the rope around my neck. You know, Mama, I think they will definitely let me do that. I will then explain that we Baha'is are not allowed to kiss anyone's hand except the hands of our murderer. That hand must be kissed because it will speed up our journey towards our beloved. Then I will kiss the rope I'm going to be hanged with. Then I'll ask for the permission again and say this prayer." And as she was standing in front of me, she closed her eyes, crossed her hands on her chest, and in a very spiritual manner, like a lover singing a song for her beloved, she chanted the prayer. Then she opened her eyes and said, "And then I will pray for the true happiness of all humankind, and I will say goodbye to this mortal life and leave to go to my adored one." I looked at her, but I couldn't see her. I heard her, but I could not comprehend what she was saying. On the one hand, my emotional attachment to her was frightening me. On the other, she had taken me to a beautiful spiritual world. 10 days later, she was killed.
So ever since I heard this story, I've always been very struck by this final act of Mona's life. What did this mean? Why did she kiss the noose? And I wonder if perhaps in that moment, the noose around her neck represented her sacrifice. It represented everything that she was willing to give her life for, everything that she was unwilling to compromise on. It represented her commitment to her faith, her commitment to loving humanity, loving God, no matter what. And just like her ancestor, Cyrus the Great, it represented her commitment, her unbreakable dedication to freedom of belief for all people. And so I've written this next song singing from the point of view of the noose. And in this song, I'm imagining the scene on that night of June 18th, 1983. And I imagine that the women are taken from their cell, they're put on the bus, and they're driven to the public square of Shiraz. And the executioner is there, perhaps some authorities are there to oversee the event. And in the song, I imagine that of all the people who are present, witnessing what's happening, the only being that can actually see the truth of these women, that can actually see their inner beauty and goodness, is this little piece of rope this moose, and seeing these women for who and what they really are, the moose falls in love with them and considers it the greatest privilege to be so close to these 10 brave souls in their final moments. And the noose sings out to these women saying, "You told me that love is queen and freedom is life. And I held you so close to me, and I longed for nothing more than to die with you." So this song is called "To Die With You," and you'll notice that at the end of the song, I will sing these women's names. And if you feel moved to echo their names, if you want to express their names, just feel free to sing an echo when you hear me singing their names. This is dedicated to Moya, Mashi, Mona, Shiri, Zari, Ezat, Sini, Nusrat, Tamari, and Akhtar. I was there when the heavens bowed their heads and the earth stood forth with her eyes awash with red. I touched your hair in a moment out of time. How could I ask for more? How could I dare demand a sign? I saw you there on the coldest prison mile. How did you stay so fair? How did you find the grace to smile? I kissed your hair while the moon was cleft in two. I had no need for prayer. Every thread of my soul was tied to you. We danced in 1,000 worlds neath the brilliant blue sky, and the rays of the sun paled before the gleam in your eye. You told me that love is queen and that freedom is life, and I held you so close to me, and I longed for nothing more than to die with you. I was there when a million trumpets blew, all but the dead could hear, all the rivers of life returned to you. I touched your lips in a moment of despair. Your breath was a rose-scented breeze through the dead desert air. We danced in 1,000 worlds neath the brilliant blue sky. All the wealth of the world was dust before the gleam in your eye. You told me that love is cool and that freedom is life. Then you whispered so close to me, and I longed for nothing. We danced in 1,000 worlds beneath the star-sprinkled sky, and the face of the moon paled before the light in your eye. You told me that love is queen and that freedom is life, and you came so close to me, and I longed for nothing more than to die with So this brings us to the end of our musical journey. And I was thinking, I wondered what we could all take away from this journey as we step out the door and we go back out into our lives. What will we take with us? And so I wanted to offer you something to take with you from this story. And something I think is very important to remember is that while outwardly this is a tragic story of these 10 women whose lives and futures were stolen from them under completely unjust circumstances, I think it's important to also remember that inwardly, underneath the surface, this is a story of extraordinary courage and inner strength and constructive resilience in the face of great adversity and cruelty. And I think it's a story that we can all draw inspiration from. We can draw strength from it and courage from the story in the difficulties that we face in our own lives, whatever they might be. And so, with that in mind, I wanted to offer you a question to take away with you. And this might be a question that is just a private question for you to take away and think about in your own time. And I'm sure each of us will have a unique individual response to this question. And the question is, what do these 10 women inspire me to do in my life, in my community, in the world? These were women who really deeply believed in this. Our story is one, in a very profound way. And they were actively striving to live out that belief in the way they lived their lives. They were dedicated to promoting understanding between different kinds of people and peace building between different kinds of people. And even though these women accepted what was happening to them with extraordinary grace and courage, it's very clear that they wanted to live. They wanted to live their lives and contribute to making the world a better place. I mentioned to you that Mona, along with several of the others, were very focused on doing these children's classes and getting involved in helping to teach future generations of humanity about the truly important things in life. And so, they're not in this world anymore, but we're all here, and we can continue doing what they were doing. And these women had a vision of hope for a better future for the world that was so powerful in their hearts that they refused to give up on that vision, even at the cost of their own lives. And I have actually met people who knew these women personally. And they have told me that these women have inspired people all over the world to work on peace building and community building and changing the world for the betterment of all humanity. And so I hope this question gives you some food for thought and empowers you to think of what kinds of things we can each do to make the world a more peaceful, united, understanding, prejudice-free place. And so with that in mind, I'd like to finish with one final short song, which I'd like to sing in the Irish style with no guitar, just voice. And this is a song. This is a song about the theme of universal human solidarity. And it's really about the importance of wishing each other well, whoever we are and wherever we come from. And I wrote this song many years ago as a gift for my brother, and it's called Song for My Brother. And I usually sing a song for my brother, but tonight I'd like to sing a song for my sister with these 10 women in mind. And this song is inspired by what these women believed in. Oh, sister, well, I wish you on your journey homeward. Oh, may you treasure every step along the way. So I will see you where the river meets the ocean, underneath the shelter of the greatest name. Oh, may your heart and soul ascend unto the kingdom. Peace be upon you and upon your family. And may the gentle winds of heaven's revelation breathe upon you breezes of eternity. Oh, sister, we are but the drops of one great ocean. Oh, we are leaves upon the branches of one tree. One heart between us, and between us only one soul, to sing aloud the sweetest songs of unity. Once again express my thanks to the local assembly of the Baha'i community here in Portland for having me here. I'd like to thank John and Patty for hosting me overnight. And I'd like to, can we just give a big round of applause to Randy for our sound tonight? Thank you so much, and lastly, I would like to thank all of you for coming, because you know this story and the lives of these women has inspired me greatly, not just in my music, but just in my life. And I find myself drawing inspiration and courage from their story. And I think it's always a privilege to have a space where we can share the things that inspire us with others. And thank you for giving me that space tonight. I'm deeply grateful to you all for being here. It's a great privilege. Thank you all. Thank you.
such an inspiring story and sharing it in such a beautiful way. A few other announcements. The story he shared of these women, they gave their lives for the emancipation of humanity. And we know in this country, emancipation is a significant thing in our history, especially with the African American population. So in honor of their sacrifice, we can continue this observance and celebration at the Baha'i Center a week from Sunday on the 23rd. We will actually be observing Juneteenth, and we'll start with the drumming celebration, followed by meaning conversations regarding the topic, and then that'll be followed by a unity feast. So there are flyers outside by the refreshments that are provided. Please share this story and tonight's performance in your social media, and remember to include hashtag #OurStoryIsOne. If you'd like to connect with Luke online, please feel welcome to share a QRS code. Randy is holding those up in the back. You can scan that with your phone and be able to connect with Luke. And if you'd like to support his work, you can do that through his website, lukeslott.com.
Go Patreon.
What's that?
Go Patreon.
Cool.
Go on, just.
That's new stuff. So thank you once again.
And thank you to our readers, Ebony and Magni. Please feel free to stick around for refreshments and also have conversations about what this means to you and how it's touched your heart and what we need to do moving forward with this inspiration. Thank you.
66.
How are you? So good to see you.